Hi, folks. Welcome to another bonus episode of Science Fiction Book Club.
That's right.
My name's Abu. I'm joined, as always, by Obssa. And, Obssa, we're here to talk about Bong Joon-ho's latest flick, Mickey 17, which is an adaptation of the book we are currently covering on the podcast, Mickey 7, by Edward Ashton.
That's right.
You and I both saw this movie together this weekend.
Yep.
And we have some thoughts to share. But before we dive in, very quick spoiler notice. You're going to want to make sure you've seen the movie.
I feel like that's a fair warning.
We're really just going to talk
Yes.
about the whole movie.
That's right.
So go watch the film first and then come and listen to our discussion of it. As far as book spoilers go, we're only 6 chapters in.
Fair.
But we know a lot of our patrons, a lot of folks on the Discord have already read the book. You and I have already read the book.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue with this conversation with book spoilers.
That's right.
If you are still reading along with us, feel free to wait on this episode and listen once you've read the book.
Yeah.
But just a heads up. Okay, let's get into it, Obssa. Let's talk about Mickey 17.
Let's.
Tell me your feelings.
Yeah.
In broad strokes first, and then
broad
let's drill
strokes,
down into details.
Definitely. So, yeah, we had the chance to see it, opening weekend. Lots of hype, lots of excitement. We're both huge Bong Joon-ho fans.
Love his movies.
Obviously, we've been enjoying the book thus far, and a lot of anticipation coming into this film. I think, broadly speaking, there were some highs. Definitely some moments worth pointing out as being quite exceptional. On the whole, I will be frank and candid with you folks that I did not like the movie. On the whole, I found it to be honestly quite a departure from other films of Bong Joon-ho's more than anything. And though there are some divergences from the book, I, if anything, would have asked for more.
Yes.
Interestingly.
More divergences.
I would have gone even more. And I think that would have allowed the movie to perhaps explore some of the many kind of themes and plot elements that it really only touches on.
Yes.
And we didn't get enough of that, I think, in the movie. So I think that's kind of where I sit. I didn't love the movie, but I
totally fair.
I also had a great time watching the movie with you. So
right, we
had a great weekend.
Ate some popcorn and had some nachos. And
that's right.
Yeah, it was good to hang.
Yeah.
In a non-podcast capacity,
Yeah,
good to just be friends.
Exactly.
And not co-hosts.
That's right. Yeah.
Actually, I'm kind of right there with you.
Yeah.
We were chatting about this after we saw the film, of course, but I also unfortunately didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, which we'll get into once we drill down further. But just speaking in broad strokes up front, I went in with high expectations.
Yep.
We've enjoyed covering the book on the podcast. And so I was like, okay, Bong Joon-ho has a great premise here to work with.
Yeah.
Is the book a home run? No. But is the book bad? Certainly not. It's still a great book.
Totally.
And there's wonderful material to work with. You put that in the hands of a director like Bong, you're going to get a spectacular movie.
Would certainly expect it.
We didn't get a spectacular movie.
Unfortunately, no.
I didn't have a lot of fun watching it. I thought it was quite shallow in its story and even its characters and certainly its themes. I walked away disappointed that such great potential was wasted on a film that ended up being kind of simplistic and surface level.
Right.
And much like you, I wanted more. I wanted director Bong to take it in a deeper, weirder direction.
Totally.
And, and certainly it's a quirky movie. That's kind of a signature of director Bong.
Yeah, totally.
But it almost doesn't take the sci-fi premise far enough.
Totally. Yeah.
And I wished it had.
Yeah.
If anything, all it really did was make me want to go back and watch Snowpiercer and Obssa and Parasite. Like the incredible Bong Joon-ho films that I love so much.
Yeah.
This Mickey 17 feels like one I'm not going to go back and ever rewatch.
Yeah, and I will say, I did go back, in fact, and rewatch Snowpiercer and Okja.
Oh, incredible!
And in the last 30 days, I've also seen Memories of Murder. And,
wow, okay.
I mean, I'm absolutely a huge fan of Bong Joon-ho, and I'll have more to say about this, but when comparing to his previous films, this one is quite notably different. I mean, it's not quite as good. I think ultimately,
Uh,
in my rankings, this kind of falls to the bottom of his works,
yeah,
unfortunately.
right. Again, it just made me want to go back and watch my
Yeah.
favorites, which is not necessarily a great reaction to have to a great director's latest film.
Right.
It's like, I'd rather watch your old ones.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that might honestly even be my recommendation. Perhaps perhaps if you haven't read the book, perhaps if you're not quite, maybe if you're not a huge sci-fi fan, maybe
Yeah.
this might hit the right spot for you. If you've seen his other movies, however, I would say you'd be better off probably rewatching one of them.
Yeah. They're excellent films.
They're excellent films.
Okay. Shall we drill down now? Let's
Let's
get
do it.
into specifics. We both
Yeah.
have some notes here in front of us that we want to touch on. We've been teasing it out. So talk to me. What's one of the first things you want to drill into?
Let's maybe talk about the characters that
Okay.
we've got here.
Yes.
So obviously Mickey 7 becomes Mickey 17 in this film, and we also get Mickey 18, also played by Robert Pattinson. And I've seen honestly a lot of praise for his performance online.
Same.
And I would agree that he does a capable job, maybe a proficient job playing this kind of split character that has, despite being effectively a clone,
Mm-hmm.
has distinct personalities and little, vocal quirks. And I think even just his facial mannerisms really do give you the sense that we have two somehow distinct beings here,
Yeah.
despite having come from the same kind of organic matter and having theoretically the same kind of memories and consciousness. So I think he does a great job, capturing that particular split between the Mickeys.
Yeah.
What I, on the other hand, found kind of grating and really quite confusing was how much of a buffoon he is in this
Yes.
movie.
17.
Yeah, I didn't really understand that particular directorial choice. And I also just found it a little cringeworthy, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether to feel for him, to laugh at him, it
Yeah.
just kind of, I felt a little kind of icky, honestly, about that portrayal. But I don't know. I mean, what did you think of Robert Pattinson in this?
Broadly, I agree. I will say I enjoyed Pattinson's portrayal
Yeah.
of Mickey a tad bit more than you did.
Yeah.
For me, it was actually one of the few highlights of the film
Sure.
where I was like, okay,
Sure.
I love Robert Pattinson.
Totally.
And he's having a lot of fun on screen.
Yeah.
Particularly, I think his portrayal of Mickey 18
Yes.
was very strong.
100%.
He did a lot of fun physical acting with that.
Yes.
The way he changed his voice and
Totally.
inflection.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed Robert Pattinson as Mickey.
Yeah.
I agree, though, with your criticism of Mickey 17
Yeah.
being kind of stupefied so much more than he is in the book.
Yeah.
Not that he needed to be a one-to-one translation of the book,
No.
but I think even just 17, the character itself, separate from the book,
Yeah.
crossed the line from endearing into annoying,
Totally.
like a few too many times.
Totally.
I think they were going for like lovable, endearing
Yeah.
kind of goofball.
Yeah.
Who really loves his girlfriend. I've been seeing a lot of like wife guy memes online.
Sure.
It's like,
Yeah.
he better look at you the way Mickey 17
Yeah.
looks at Nasha, or he's not worth it.
That's
And I
funny.
get that.
That's good. Yeah.
Some of that is endearing, but
Yeah.
a lot of it, again, to your point, for me as well, became grating. Where I was just like, this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas 18, I thought was great,
Yeah.
and tragically, like, didn't get a lot of screen time.
No, exactly. I mean, that's the thing that's interesting, that in this film, his character is kind of heightened. Like, he is more cruel. I mean, he is more willing and ready to toss
Yeah.
down whoever down the
Yeah.
bio chute, But we didn't get a ton of screen time from him. And similarly, I think another, really standout actor, I'm not sure about his character in this movie, but Stephen Yeun as effectively Berto. I think his
Berto.
name in the movie was
Timo, I think.
Timo. Yeah, that's right. And I thought, it was a pretty interesting kind of character arc, but again, didn't get a lot of screen time.
Yeah,
So it felt
barely.
like a lot of wasted potential there. And I honestly have to say, I didn't quite understand the plot need or value of having the goons from Midgard follow them onto the ship and onto Niflheim.
And it feels like they weren't even present.
I,
Like the last third of the movie forgot about that whole
yeah,
plot
yeah,
suddenly.
right, right.
I mean, the pacing is all over the place. Like the last third of the movie also, who are these other guys that like rise up against the Trump character?
That's right. That's right.
Against
That's
Marshall.
Right. That's
you know?
right. That's right.
Who's this? Where did this insurgency come from?
Right. When they suddenly turn and they're like,
And
oh
they
no.
start to help Nasha.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
You know,
That's right.
so it feels like a lot. There's like pieces missing, maybe. Or,
right.
So
right.
to
Maybe
your point,
on the
like
cutting room floor, like on the editing floor, perhaps
exactly.
there was like a whole scene that we somehow lost because
Yeah.
otherwise their motivation,
Yeah.
kind of inexplicable.
So I agree.
Honestly.
Again, I like Stephen Yeun.
Yeah.
He's been wonderful in other things,
Yes.
but he didn't have much to work with here.
Right.
And he barely had any screen time. And when he
Right.
did, it was just like to continue to do this loan shark
Yeah.
plot thing
Right.
that didn't go anywhere.
It just
so
didn't go
it was
anywhere.
unsatisfying.
Yeah,
I
totally.
totally agree. Well, we're already kind of talking about Mark Ruffalo.
I guess we are, aren't we?
How did you feel about his character?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I could get much further than those really cartoonish teeth that he had.
Oh my goodness.
I think no knock on the makeup team for this movie. I just didn't enjoy his character. Anytime he appeared on the screen, I almost had to look away. I was dipping back into my nachos whenever he spoke, just so I could kind of drown out his words. Essentially, I don't know. I think we would obviously agree, and most people online also seem to share the view that he is very thinly veiled Trump character.
Yeah, certainly
quite Trumpian, and has his followers that there's a mix of criminals and others that follow him onto the ship and onto Niflheim.
The red hats.
And they are literally wearing red hats at some point. Clearly there's a kind of strong cult vibes there.
Yes.
So I don't know. I mean, I think I didn't like the character, and therefore I can't say much positive about Mark Ruffalo's performance.
Yeah.
He did the job, I guess.
Right. He played the character.
But
yeah, I agree. The character itself of Marshall was such a thinly veiled like bit about Trump that I couldn't help but be like, is this a bit? Are they just doing a bit the whole time? Which is not really what you want to, even for like a caricature.
Right.
Even for something that's like absurdist humor, you still want to believe to some extent that like this character is who he says he is.
Yeah.
But I think it was such a thinly veiled, like sort of like gag about Trump.
Yeah.
That after the first or second scene where I was like, Trump, funny. They're cracking a joke about it. And then it just kept cracking the same joke about Trump.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And to be clear, we're no Trump defenders.
Certainly not.
This is not in any way a defense of Trump or us being upset that Trump is getting made fun of.
No.
Please make more fun of him.
Yeah.
But for this movie, it just wasn't enjoyable to watch.
No. I mean, I think it kind of speaks to some of the, for me, like tonal inconsistencies in the movie.
Yeah.
Where if this is meant to be kind of a pointed criticism of, say, our current political, times and circumstances.
There's shades of that, certainly.
And there are shades of that. Then I don't quite understand the tone of the film. It really, it leaps all over the place for me. Where are we supposed to be laughing at his depiction? Are we sad about what's
Are we horrified, disgusted?
Yeah. And I just didn't quite, it didn't land, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? Speaking of tone, this kind of brings up my first bullet point I wanted to touch on. We've now well established on this podcast that I don't like comedy.
It's a fact, folks.
It's an unfortunate fact. Yeah. And look, this movie turned out to be way more comedy than I thought. Certainly, there were comedic moments in the trailers, and certainly there were going to be some sort of like gag jokes if you know Bong Joon-ho's humor and his previous films. I expected all of that going in. I didn't expect for the entire like almost 2-hour runtime of the film to be a long running gag joke. The comedy like almost never landed for me in any scene. In any scene that was supposed to be funny, I was sitting next to you like stone cold. And there were people laughing in our theater, to be fair. Like we didn't have a like dead theater or anything, but it certainly wasn't the like uproarious laughter of people like belly laughing. The comedy didn't work for me at all. And perhaps, you know, for somebody out there, it did. Somebody who enjoyed the film, maybe they thought a lot of it was super funny.
Right.
But because it didn't work for me, it dragged the rest of the film down as well.
Yeah.
Because so much of it was comedic in tone rather than actually exploring the sci-fi themes, which I wanted more of.
Totally.
Or even exploring, to your point, the satirical commentary.
Yes.
Both of those are sidelined for like the jokes.
Totally.
And the balance, I think, is off, you know, to your point. Like the tonal balance of those things in this film feels very off.
Totally.
And certainly not what I would have wanted from the movie. You know, I went in expecting a sci-fi story that explored some interesting sci-fi themes and premises.
Totally.
And some great political commentary. Like that's what you get from Bong Joon-ho.
Totally.
We got very surface level, thinly layered shades of that.
Yeah.
And then mostly a lot of like bits.
Yeah.
Which I found very, you know, disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would certainly agree with that. And I have a much kind of greater appetite for comedy, I think. I rather enjoy it. And there were moments in this film that I found myself laughing, but I think I honestly, I probably laughed, you know, at more than with, you know.
That's exactly correct.
Which is not obviously not what you want in a movie like this.
No.
And it's also, I think, you know, obviously we're gonna feel we'll feel the weight of the divergences from the book, and I'm sure that's coloring our perspective a little bit. And
that's a good point.
Certainly talk about that. I think what I still find myself kind of making a greater and honestly disappointing comparison to is Bong Joon-ho's previous films. I mean, again, you know, having recently watched Snowpiercer and Okja, there were some honestly wonderfully kind of funny and really rich scenes in both of those movies. And you take the portrayal of, say, Tilda Swinton in Okja, and just from the very beginning, there's some great like comedic moments. You know, at one point she kind of refers to her grandfather as being this evil man, and the contrast and like begins laughing, and the audience that's arrayed begins laughing, and it's just this weird kind of ironic contrast, and it's honestly funny. And you have that moment, and then you like take, say, you know, Toni Collette's performance here, or, you know, Mark Ruffalo kind of overplaying this character that honestly, like, we could have done maybe once or twice, but then for the entirety of a film, kind of loses its comedy. You know, it kind of starts to feel like somebody like insisting on you laughing at something that you know, maybe was funny the first time, but, you know, 17 times later, it's
exactly. Even the sauce thing with Marshall's wife.
Yeah.
I didn't, and again, maybe it just, the commentary is going over my head or something, but I certainly didn't get.
Yeah.
You know, I saw some theories online in the past couple days about like the sauce represents this distillation of taking from nature and distilling it into something you think is valuable but is actually meaningless, and like rich people doing that.
Sure.
You know, and it's like, I feel like you're stretching. You know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like my other primary criticism of the film is like the comedy sure didn't land.
Yeah.
But also I feel like the political satire and commentary didn't land because it never became more than like surface level.
Yeah.
And the folks out there who are really like, what great commentary.
Yeah.
Everything I read, I just kind of sit back and I'm like, I feel like you're reaching.
Yeah.
You're really reaching for
Totally.
something that I don't think is in the film.
Yeah.
I don't think it goes that deep.
Yeah.
And that might be my own ignorance, you know?
Yeah.
But I certainly walked away from that movie less blown away about the commentary
Yeah.
about our current affairs in the
Yeah.
world than with Parasite.
Right.
With Parasite, I was like floored.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I certainly wasn't floored here with any
Yeah.
of the commentary. It was
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, Trump loves to be on TV and he's an idiot and there's a cult that follow. Like, what else are we saying about this? It's
Exactly.
like really surface level.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's also Bong Joon-ho is certainly well known for his, critiques of capitalism and
Of course.
his
Yeah.
portrayal of, class conflict. You take
Yes.
Snowpiercer and you see it quite, I mean, visually, it's really quite stunning and interesting that you see it as you go from train to train, that there are increasingly kind of more, the stratification is kind of
Yes.
captured in the train
In
physically.
the train. Oh,
And
God,
in
Snowpiercer is so good.
in this film, it is so good. It's honestly, I think, Chris Evans' best movie, best work.
Oh, shit!
That's what I have to
All
say.
right, Captain America stands. Back the fuck up.
Honestly, I'm gonna say that he got Captain America
Because Snowpiercer?
because of Snowpiercer.
That may be true.
He's got some there are excellent fight scenes in Snowpiercer
Interesting.
that I think,
Nice.
honestly is probably a good part of why Chris Evans got that
Sure.
role. But
Sure, I don't doubt it.
in any case, the way that Bong Joon-ho is able to tell that particular story and like really capture that theme in his other works feels much more poignant and nuanced than in this film, which is I think just to kind of underscore our point here. That's,
Right. Yeah,
isn't quite what I
absolutely.
hear.
I agree. And you know what? Your comment there just made me realize another critique.
Yeah.
Because yes, there is a camcorder, like sort of like almost an old school camcorder
Yeah.
in the film, but that kind of gets me thinking about the visuals of this film.
Yeah.
Which I felt were quite uninspired.
Totally.
Like it's very like the base and the ship itself are
Yeah.
like this very simple industrialist
Yeah.
base.
Yeah.
Niflheim is literally just snow.
Yeah.
So there's like nothing to really speak of there.
Yeah.
The tech at work outside of the biorecycler.
Yeah.
Where we see Mickey come out
Right.
time
Or the
and time again.
bioprinter.
The bioprinter,
Yeah.
excuse me. That was cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which of course that's like it's central to the plot. You
Right.
got to make that like a beautiful piece of tech.
Totally.
I think they nailed it.
Yeah.
The bioprinter was cool.
was
I liked
definitely-
the gag of Mickey
Yes, I was
coming
gonna
out.
say that was one of the few kind of comedic bits that
Because
honestly,
it's subtle.
it's good. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I liked the Mickey like jerking every time he
yes,
came out
exactly.
when the bioprinter
yeah, and then
like
eventually
glitches.
like just like flopping onto the ground. They don't really care anymore.
Yeah. And for me, like that sort of background, subtle, understated humor works. I liked that. I liked the bioprinter, but the rest of the tech, the rest of like the wardrobe of the characters, not particularly distinct. It's like very simple gray slacks and military attire.
Yeah.
Nothing visually is super memorable in this movie, outside of the creeper design being super cute.
Right.
I was also disappointed that like the sci-fi aspect of it all was like extremely simplistic.
Yeah.
And
kind of washed out.
You've seen it. Yeah. Washed out, gray, military.
Yeah.
Again, disappointing given how gorgeous, movies like Snowpiercer and Obssa are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the kind of other aspect of it there is, perhaps a source material problem. I mean, I think there's plenty of kind of interesting tech in the book, but as far as I guess the landscape of the book, I mean, there really aren't many environments that we kind of experience or
Frozen
explore.
Planet.
Yeah. So I mean, I can appreciate that there are maybe some limitations that
Certainly.
Bong Joon-ho is kind of curtailed by. But on the other hand, there were plenty of divergences from the book, and it's ultimately where I wish he would have gone even further.
Oh my goodness!
If we're departing from the book as kind of as much as we have in this movie, then go all the way. I mean, go ahead and start to explore, all manners of kind of interesting, angles that we can given this premise. But just didn't end up really doing that,
No,
unfortunately. Yeah.
no. And I think even setting everything we've set aside,
Yeah.
the biggest disappointment for me was exactly what you just said. This movie didn't take the sci-fi premise of the
Yeah.
book, which is cool and unique
Totally.
and interesting
Yes.
and raises a lot
Yes.
of, ship of Theseus
Yes.
philosophical
Totally.
questions.
Yeah.
It explored none of
None of
that.
that.
And if
None of
anything,
that.
it flattened,
Absolutely.
intentionally flattened some of
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Where Mickey 17 and 18 are not like distinct personalities because we're pondering the nature of the human soul
And consciousness
and
and
consciousness
identity and all of
and
these.
reprinting
Yes,
and the
totally.
ethics.
Yes.
No, they're different personalities because that one scientist tripped
just
on a
kind of
pipe.
tripped over the cord. It was silly. It was
just
really
a bad
silly.
printing job.
Yeah, it was just a bad print job. Yeah.
And that flattens the whole premise of having
Yes.
two Mickeys in the first place and
Yes.
raising any philosophical or ethical questions about two Mickeys at all.
Yeah. And it ultimately kind of undermines the resolution at the end. Like, why exactly did they decide that cloning was no longer a viable thing? It was
Yeah.
always the case that, the clones would have to suffer. I mean, these expendables, I should say, would have to suffer and die kind of
Yeah.
over and over. I mean, that's kind of baked into the nature of expendables.
Yes.
So it doesn't really ever explain like what was the precipitating event that made Earth decide that this is no longer an acceptable practice. I
Yeah.
mean, it honestly.
Yeah.
I felt
Outside
like
of the Allen's serial killer
Yes,
story.
Yes.
Which again, for folks who have read the book, obviously,
Much better.
God, the Allen story
That's the
book
movie we want.
is like make that movie.
Make that movie.
Yeah. Honestly, write that book. Like the Allen story where he
Yes.
copies himself and takes over a whole planet,
Yes.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Is incredible.
Absolutely.
And they turned it into just like a sort of simplified serial killer. Again,
Yeah.
sort of flattened the premise too much.
Yeah.
And flattened the sci-fi.
Yeah.
Which like that bums me out because as a fan of sci-fi, like that's what makes sci-fi so good.
Totally.
Is taking an idea and saying, what if it goes to the
extreme.
100th degree?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Why not 1,000 clones of one guy that take over a whole planet?
Right. Exactly.
And then you're like, I'm in.
What if? Yeah,
right.
Totally.
And that, to me, justifies humanity going, oh, let's not fuck with cloning. Oh, my God.
Exactly. Yeah.
One serial killer event could certainly get some legislation passed, but is it going to ban all cloning forever and all of human civilization? That's tougher to believe. So
yeah, and it also, I mean, it happened well before the Mickeys kind of came to be, so it doesn't even really explain the kind of decision making there. So ultimately, it feels like we get a lot of conclusions that didn't really have enough to substantiate them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Agreed.
Even Nasha, I think at the end, of this movie,
becoming a council member.
It's like, why?
What council? Aren't a majority? Doesn't that break its own premise? Because aren't a majority of people on this ship cultists?
Yeah.
For Marshall?
And
aren't they red hat toting
eugenicists? I think.
Yeah.
Like that's their whole shtick.
Aren't they all like make Niflheim great again?
Right.
Why is Nasha like the one black woman on the ship?
Yeah.
On the council.
Yeah.
And going to win the like council seat.
Right.
What like leftist like
They
ideology suddenly sprouted?
Come to Jesus moment?
Yeah,
like they all just converted suddenly to
Yeah. So again, the movie is like not so concerned with its own themes and ideas.
Or internal consistency.
It doesn't want to explore the sci-fi premise. If anything, it just flattens it and hand waves much of it away.
Yeah.
Which, as a sci-fi fan, as a fan of political satire and comedy, I walked away disappointed on both fronts.
Totally.
And as a noted hater of comedy, I got too much comedy.
Yeah.
So really, this just like checked all the boxes of things that I was inevitably going to be heartbroken by. So I walked away quite disappointed in the film. And I think we can wrap up by saying like, we love director Bong Joon-ho's work.
Yeah.
He is a master of his craft.
He is truly a master. Yes.
And like our criticisms here aren't personal to him or his career.
No. Or to Robert Pattinson.
Or to Robert Pattinson. Like,
Mark Ruffalo or Tony Collette.
I just think this movie couldn't decide which lane it wanted to pick.
Right.
Was it a political commentary? Was it a sci-fi exploration of a sci-fi premise? was it just like a purely comedic film?
Right.
I think it leaned purely comedic.
Yeah.
But it fell short in that respect.
Yeah.
And the other two aspects completely fell off the cliff because of that.
Yeah.
And I just think like somewhere along the line this movie lost its focus and couldn't figure out which lane it wanted to be in.
Right. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if we're supposed to feel, say, pathos even for the Mickey character, then that depiction of him is too comedic for us to really feel the weight of that. And so, to your point, yeah, it ultimately kind of doesn't pick a lane, and therefore, just kind of a huge, essentially, just a kind of a crash that we're watching on screen for 2 hours. You know?
Certainly. To end on perhaps a positive note.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Bong Joon-ho film?
I didn't rewatch Parasite, but I think I've seen it maybe 2 or 3 times now, and I certainly find it to be kind of the most harrowing and like really
harrowing,
kind of just eerie, and the most kind of extremely pointed of his social commentaries, in a way that I can't say I like relate to the world that he depicts there per se, but I found it to be like really quite. I mean, it makes you kind of almost like reevaluate your own choice to have an iPhone. You know,
certainly,
you're like,
certainly.
Oh man, am I participating in? Am I colluding in? You know, this like really kind of
how guilty am I of this
you
being
know,
part of this system? Yeah.
So I think that one is certainly a standout to me. Ultimately, Snowpiercer for me is like one of my favorites. I love Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer takes the cake. You can't go wrong.
Look, this is a sci-fi podcast, okay? You literally took the words out of my mouth where I was like, God, Parasite is just so good.
Yeah.
But I'm a sucker for sci-fi. I'm like, Snowpiercer, to be fair, not as good.
Yeah.
Still an amazing film,
Yeah.
but the sci-fi premise, and I just love the visual metaphor, even if it's a bit on the nose, of the train literally dividing the substrata of societal classes, you know, the class system.
Yeah.
Just so fun.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have to rewatch now because I'm a big Marvel fan.
Yeah.
I love Chris Evans as Captain America.
Yeah, totally.
But was he better in Snowpiercer?
I'm just gonna say
I'm gonna have to rewatch Snowpiercer with that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, his character arc in Snowpiercer is incredible. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen the movie, but I think at least 3 or 4 times in that movie, you're taken aback by what is happening to him or what he has done. And that is...
Gosh, it's been a while since I've
just so marvelous, you know, honestly.
It's time for a rewatch then.
It's time for a rewatch. I might rewatch it, honestly.
Great, come over at 8.
Listen, hey.
Bring some food and drinks and let's do it.
It is absolutely worth it, I would say.
Yeah. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us for... this, you know, somewhat harsh critique of a film we both didn't really enjoy. But, you know, we're here to be honest and share our opinions. These are just 2 opinions.
Absolutely.
And I think ultimately we're not trying to yuck anyone's yum.
No.
If you had a blast with the film, amazing.
Yeah.
I'm envious of you.
It's a fun time, I'm told.
You were like, here's a compliment.
Deflected. No, many people are honestly enjoying this film. So I mean, don't necessarily, you know, take our critique with a grain of sand.
Right.
You know.
And certainly I think because we're such sci-fi, we're like really deep in the sci-fi world.
And we've read this book.
And we've read the book.
Like we have our expectations.
If you're a casual sci-fi fan, if you haven't read the book, don't even know it's based on a book, I think you'll actually have a fun time in this movie, and it'll be a blast.
Yeah.
I just think like we're in it so deep that our perspective and our expectations are in a different place.
Yeah, through the roof, honestly.
Either way, thank you so much for joining us for this bonus episode, folks. Thank you, of course, for joining us on the read of Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. That was a blast. As always, a reminder that you can see the entire season's reading schedule.
That's right.
In the show notes below. Indeed. Check out that link and make sure that you are prepared for our next book and our next reading assignment. So grab a copy from your local library, read the chapters we've assigned, and hope you're ready for a new book and a new adventure.
Till next time.
Toodles.
He hit them with the toodles.